So today we're diving into a pretty deep topic. How does one deal with anger and frustration, especially when faced with injustice? It's not always easy to control those emotions, right?
Absolutely. In fact, it can feel overwhelming when you're in a situation where you feel like something wrong is happening, but you're unsure how to react. And it's easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment, right?
Exactly. I've heard some people say, if you can't stand injustice, you should first look at yourself. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting perspective. If we feel frustration rising within us, it might actually signal that we're not fully understanding the cause of the situation. The first step, I think, is stepping back and asking, why do I feel this way? Instead of jumping straight into action.
Yeah, because sometimes acting on pure emotion can lead to misunderstandings. Like if you're in a situation where two people are arguing and you quickly choose a side without knowing all the facts, you might make things worse, right?
That's exactly it. I mean, imagine walking by and seeing someone being attacked. You might rush in, thinking you're doing the right thing by standing up for the victim. But what if in reality, the victim had provoked the attacker in the first place?
That makes total sense. It's like by acting impulsively, you could inadvertently escalate the situation without fully understanding why things happened in the first place. It's about observing the cause.
Right? And in that case, society and the law usually step in. Police will often remind everyone that both sides are responsible for the conflict, even if one person is more at fault. It's about balance.
So who should apologize first in such situations?
Typically the one who holds the greater responsibility, the one who is 70 at fault. The more frustrated person, the one who started the escalation, should take the first step.
That's an interesting thought. So the one who is more upset or frustrated is usually the one who bears more responsibility. Even if they were the victim in some way, their reaction plays a bigger part.
Exactly. Take a robbery, for instance. The victim might feel powerless or angry, but the thief likely has very little frustration. They've already achieved their goal. The real frustration comes after the fact, when the victim realizes their loss.
It's like the victim's frustration stems from being vulnerable in the first place. They put themselves in a position to be taken advantage of, even if it wasn't intentional.
Yes. And that's why when we face injustice, it's important to reflect on how we may have contributed to the situation, even if it wasn't obvious at first. Otherwise, the cycle of anger and frustration continues.
That's true. When you think about fights in relationships, whether between couples or even colleagues, the one who provokes often has more responsibility. And it's not about placing blame, it's about understanding the dynamics that led to the situation.
That's a good point. But let's talk about physical fights for a second. If someone gets hit, they're obviously in pain. But does that automatically mean the person who hit them is blameless?
I see what you're getting at. The person who hits could be reacting to provocation, but the one who was provoked also has a part to play in the escalation. It's a complex situation where both sides have some responsibility.
Exactly. And if the person who's been provoked doesn't recognize their role, the conflict won't be resolved. That's why apologizing can be so powerful. It helps break the cycle of anger and frustration.
So in a relationship or even in any conflict, it's not just about who's right or wrong in the moment. It's about addressing past issues that haven't been resolved and preventing them from resurfacing later.
Absolutely. And that's why conflicts often repeat, because the core issues were never dealt with properly. They're like unresolved knots that keep coming back to haunt you.
That's a perfect way to put it. So the key is to untie those knots, address who was wrong, and educate each other about misbehavior. Then the argument can finally end.
Yes, and without that acknowledgement, even a small problem can reignite the conflict. The cycle continues until both sides can reflect and take responsibility.
Right, because without resolving past issues, even the tiniest spark can set off the same old argument. It's all about understanding the bigger picture.
Exactly. Once both sides recognize their part in the conflict and come to terms with it, that's when true resolution happens. It's not about winning the argument, it's about understanding each other better.
And that brings us full circle. The more patient and understanding we are with ourselves and others, the more likely we are to break free from this cycle of anger and injustice. So, in the end, patience is the key to resolving these issues.
Absolutely. It's not easy, but it's the only way to truly find peace and understanding. Patience allows us to see beyond our immediate emotions and look at the bigger picture.